Hi everyone, Editor Hammy here, looking a little bit raggedy. I'm here with my cup. My cup's empty, but I'm here with my cup. Today we're going to talk about the lore and theories that I have on Chapter 2 of Tribe 9. I originally was gonna just have one video that does the lore theory, background, synopsis of Chapter 2, and then also have the anime synopsis in it, but then my recording ended up being 2.5 hours long. So that's why we're gonna have multiple videos instead. And I think going forward, I'll probably keep the same structure where I will have one video for the background and story synopsis of a plot line, and then have a second follow-up video to go through the lore and theories about that story. All of these lore videos are still going to be contained within one stream. So, even though this whole series of me being a little bit of a lore YouTuber is very new, the plan is that like every other Sunday, I'll have all my stuff prepared, and then we'll have a little stream on Twitch where I'll just kind of do everything on stream, do the recording on stream and then work on the video after that and post that to YouTube. So if you all want to catch that live, you can join us over at twitch.tv/hammylime. Otherwise, you can just keep waiting for the YouTube lore videos. Anyway, that's enough yapping from Raggedy Editor Hammy. Let's get into the fun juice. Chapter 2 is very fun. That's why this is a long one, okay? Now that we're familiar with the story, let's get into some of the juicy lore. So, Minato City is, because Neo Tokyo is inspired by the real Tokyo, right? The 23 wards of Tokyo correspond to the 23 cities of Neo Tokyo. So, the Minato City of real life is like the most known landmark is the Tokyo Tower. So, there it is, right there, the Minato Tower. Where is she? There she is. The Minato Tower. Oh yeah, they even have a little bar. I forgot about that. They have a little bar in the game inside of the Minato Tower. Now, I don't know Tokyo too well, so I'm so sorry for talking out of my booty a little bit. But Minato City is kind of known, in real life, Minato City is kind of known for being one of the wealthiest areas of Tokyo. If I understand it correctly, there's a lot of business there. There's a lot of embassies there, like foreign embassies there. So there's a lot of foreign individuals who live within Minato City. So this kind of big wealth within Minato City fits really well with the governing rules that we're dealing with in the game. This whole concept of the class system. You have the king whose face is known everywhere, and then you have the silent super rich who just have little puppets everywhere. They have their hands everywhere. That's kind of corresponding to those influencers in the game. They're the highest ranking nobles within the game. So you have all these rich people, all this nobility, and just everyone under them is just regular commoners. And those commoners, after a certain point, they'll become underclass. And in real life, they're just going to be living in destitution, whereas in this game that just really satirizes those societal rules, they die. They get shot by lasers from the sky. One more comment here from Editor Hammy on the governing rules. They also bring up this notion that people who are commoners are able to become nobles. Like, in the game, you just have to increase up your points enough and you can become a noble. But what we encounter within the game is that Yo tries to become a noble through normal altruistic means, but because the king and the reigning nobility have such an oppressive grip on their nobility, it's kind of like an illusory dream that someone can get enough points to become a noble. It's the people who become nobles are the ones who the king and the nobles decide can become nobles, Anyway, that's all I can really say about Minato City. So let's first talk about the Trash Tribe members who accompany Yo. So, like I said before, Mitsuki Iroha, Tsuruko Senba, and Yutaka Gotanda joined Yo along but they were there in Shinagawa City. They're kind of there. They're building on the plot. Obviously, Tsuki is really important in this chapter as, you know, one of Sui's friends. We're gonna talk about them last. Ooh, y'all, we got a lot to talk about the Meguro tribe trio. Yo, Tsuki, and Sui were all from Meguro City. We're gonna talk about them last. So let's first talk about this diva, Koishi Kohinata. Now, they copied me. Apart from the eye color, like, why is this giving me? Isn't Koishi adorable? I love him. They don't actually really say which city he's originally from, but Koishi Kohinata is a medical professional. So, in the context of the game, he's kind of useless. He doesn't do that much within chapter 2, but he's kind of there because they have to put him somewhere. Now, this game, if it were to have continued, we would have gotten to chapter 4 and 5. The game only goes up to chapter 3, but they released the scripts for chapter 4 and 5, and I'll probably do a video on both of those. But Mr. Koishi, I started skimming through the script of chapter 5, and Mr. Koishi has a bit of a bigger role in chapter 5, so he would have gotten a little bit more development in the future. But really, in this chapter, his main role is to show how altruism is a form of dominance, you know, because immediately when you think about like, oh, to be dominant and, you know, get your points in this city so you don't die, you have to like make fun of people or something like that. But no, even like Koishi, just the act of giving someone medicine is a form of exerting dominance over that individual. And so that's how Koishi maintains his dominance and survives. Why does Koishi exist? Every gacha game that, you know, has like multiple playable characters, they will usually introduce accessible characters at the start of the game so that players early on are able to complete the content of the game. Usually they will include like a free support character to keep the team alive. So that's what Koishi is. He's the free healer of this gacha game. You get him like, he's basically like one of the first characters you acquire in this game. Now this diva, the next diva, Kazuki Aoyama. Ooh, we got a lot to talk about with Mr. Kazuki Aoyama. Even before, when we were talking about the anime, he has a big presence within the anime. So before we talk about his role in the story, let's talk about his background, why he shows up in the anime, because he kind of joins the Minato tribe in the anime sort of halfway through. He joins after the leader Shun Kamiya passes away. And he just shows up one day with a broken arm. So what basically happened with Kazuki Aoyama is the Chiyoda tribe, in creating their little super soldier, Ojiro Otori, they did one of those things where like they took a bunch of orphans and had them just fight each other, and the one who came out on top was their super soldier, Ojiro Otori. Well, Kazuki Aoyama was also part of that group. He was Ojiro's kind of bestie, his best friend. Kazuki lost, you know, he was not the super soldier that came out on top. Thankfully, he didn't lose his life, but Ojiro did break his arm in the process. And so he kind of meandered over to the Minato tribe, who he believed had the best shot at taking down his old friend Ojiro. That's why he came to them, beefed them up after Shun's passing. Within the anime, he was a major asshole. He was a very mean individual. He would throw a lot of name calling. He would berate people constantly, and a lot of that was because he was so anxious and stressed about the situation with Ojiro, and he just kind of took it out on other people. He was really determined to take down Ojiro, and so he would just get extremely frustrated when the people around him weren't performing up to his expectations, basically. Kazuki's personality in general, you know, if we're gonna like think about tropes, he's that like schemer. He's the schemer character, you know, he's always like 3 steps ahead of everyone. To him, it's always an ends justifies the means kind of like way of thinking. A lot of his plans, he sort of keeps them to himself, and he just sort of tells everyone, you know, just trust me. I got this covered, just trust me. But usually his plans will put people in danger, you know, without their knowledge. And usually things will always turn out okay because, like I said, he has things planned 3 steps in advance. But people will usually get really, really frustrated with him as a result because they kind of wish they knew what he was planning, you know? After they successfully take down Ojiro in the anime, he does mellow out. After the anime, he leaves the Minato tribe and forms the Trash Tribe to be a rebel organization against Zero, you know, the big bad guy. So even though he's this big schemer, he does kind of have this like pure heart to him where he does have this desire to bring peace to Neo Tokyo. You know, back in the Chiyoda tribe, the reason he didn't become the super soldier is because he wanted to come out on top together with Ojiro. You know, he thought that that as long as the 2 of them could stick it out together, they could get past anything. By the way, if y'all don't remember, this is the Q, Mr. Shadow Man. He's Ojiro Otori. So within the context of the game now, so in the anime, he was very stressed and frustrated all the time, but in the game, he's a lot more mellowed out. He still kind of berates people, but now he does it in a bit more of like a sarcastic, positive way. You know, he does it affectionately. A lot of like the butts of his jokes are Mita. You know, he'll constantly throw like some sarcasm at Mita, and Mita will get flustered as a result, but it's all ultimately in jest. He still has that ends justifies the means methodology, and he still, you know, keeps people in the dark about his plans. For example, within the story, when I was talking about how they were trying to convince Sui into playing extreme baseball with the Trash Tribe, one of the things that Kazuki did was he had the nobles turn Yo into an underclass and basically told Sui, like, hey, if you don't play XB with us, Yo is gonna die. And so Sui, you know, it's the kind of thing that it's like, Kazuki, what are you doing? What are you doing? Hello? It works in the end. There's a lot to unpack with this man, but honestly, he's so fashion. Get into the glove. The singular glove, glamour, the blue boots, honey, the blue hair, the matching eyes. He's so fashion. Cute little thing in this game, all of the characters who appear in the anime, they all have skins modeled like based on their look in the anime. So this was what Kazuki looked like in the anime. You can see, you know, he kind of has his like little bracers on his arm because he, you know, he was dealing with a broken arm in the anime. Next up, let's get into the Minato tribe. Let's talk about the one member of the Minato tribe who really shows up in the game, and that's Santaro Mita. Unfortunately, none of the other Minato tribe members really appear yet. They were clearly intended to be kind of like hype characters that were going to show up in like really significant parts of the story. In terms of like character trope, he's the goofy ladies man character. He's the butt of a lot of Kazuki's jokes. He's a little bit, he's very extroverted. He tends to wear his heart on his sleeve, but he has a very good heart, and he has a very big heart when it comes to helping people and kind of shouldering their burdens, even in the context of the anime. So remember how I said that the leader Shun Kamiya, he was dealing with sort of a chronic illness. If we bring up the, you know, who knew about the illness, only Santaro Mita and Manamo Daimon knew about Shun's illness. And there was kind of this running gag that, oh, you know, Shun would get hung over from the coffee that Mita gives him. Well, as it turns out, the coffee that Mita was preparing for him was actually medicine to alleviate Shun's symptoms. Oh. Now, I wanted to briefly bring up this diva. Even though she doesn't really physically show up in the game, I wanted to bring her up, Miss Arisugawa Saori, because she gets a lot of mentions in the game. They just show her back in like a little cutscene. They just show her back, but she herself does not show up. Shun Kamiya, he was the pitcher of the Minato tribe, and he had these really like nasty pitches, and Miss Saori was one of the only people who was able to catch his pitches. After his passing, she became the leader of Minato tribe in his stead, and she took his passing very, very hard because she didn't know that he was ill, even though she was kind of like his partner in terms of XB, you know, sort of the vice captain of the tribe. She didn't know what was going on. So a lot of the anime after his death has her growth journey, you know, from someone who was like a capable side person. Now she's the leader, she's the one who has to bring everyone together. So that role of hers really transitioned over into the context of the game, because before she left Minato City, we don't know why she left, but before she left, she was the one who was the king, and she was the one fostering this culture of kindness and people helping each other out. So every gacha game usually will have like a hype character that they'll like tease a lot, you know, build up a lot of marketing for, and this character will usually be like stronger than everyone else. Like an example that really pops into my mind is like in Zenless Zone Zero, you had Hoshimi Miyabi. In Honkai Star Rail, you had Finon. In this game, I feel like it was going to be Arisugawa Saori, who was going to be that first really hype character. She was in a lot of promo material at the start of the game. I don't know why she's always holding a gun.
Why is she holding a gun?
She's always holding a gun in the promo material. I don't know why she's holding a gun, but get into it, honey. Now I wanted to talk about this diva. I haven't talked about him a lot. Mr. Shun Kamiya. There's a lot to unpack with this man. The former leader of Minato tribe, he also has not appeared. He has also technically not appeared within the game yet. The cat's name is Nekomaru. I've already brought him up a lot when I was talking about the anime. The reason I wanted to bring him up when talking about the story is that despite his death in the anime, why does he look like Zero? That's Zero. This is Mr. Zero. You know, the big bad villain who took over all of Neo Tokyo. Mr. Zero looks exactly like Shun Kamiya. And it's intentional because they also have the same voice actor, the same Japanese voice actor. The huge theme of Tribe 9 is life and death. That seems to be the overarching theme. Even in like the prologue of this game, you have Yo's childhood friends, Tsuki and Sui, who get killed and then revived.
Huh?
And then you have Shun Kamiya here, seemingly showing up as Zero. Why do I want to bring this up? This is part of the reason why I have my little conspiracy theory that Zero is not the big bad guy, you know? I truly think that the real big bad guy of this game... Ooh, I don't want to get a... This little dog right here, this little thing, this is Zero's mascot form. He likes to show up as this little doggy plushie. I think the real villain of this game is our beloved little twink here, Mr. Kuronaka Yo. Let's get into that tea in a little bit. We gotta talk about Sui Yakumo first, okay? Before I do that, one last thing I wanted to mention about Zero. The other reason why I think he's not the big bad villain is, do you see those arms? Those mechanical arms on his shoulders? He always has these like little... Oh, I moved Zero. He always has those little mechanical arms on his shoulders. And the way I see it is, I see it as arms holding a doll. Mr. Sui Yakumo. Let's get him on the screen. Hi, Sui. Sui is our antagonist of chapter 2. He is number 9 of the number. So like I said, he was Yo's childhood friend, and that's where the gag comes into play, you know. A lot of basically in kind of any kind of game, you're always going to have your chapter 1, your world 1, level 1, whatever. That's always going to be there to introduce players into like the mechanics of the game, the gameplay, like the characters involved in the story, give you like a little bit of background, but not really get in too deep into it. Give you basically ease players into the tutorial, get them familiar with how things work in the game. Chapter 2 is when the story starts to move along. So what better way to move along this story than to have one of Yo's childhood friends become one of the main antagonists. So he was once part of Meguro tribe. You know, Yo, Tsuki, and Sui were kind of the trio of Meguro tribe. Yo was the ace of the tribe, so he was the big star player of the team. Much to kind of Sui's annoyance, Sui always wanted to surpass Yo somehow, but he never could because Yo was always just that good. So he was, in the context of the trio, he seemed to be like that competitive male friend. You know, in friend groups, you always have that one that's a little bit competitive to everyone else. In Sui's case, that was really bad for his mental health because Yo was always so much better than him, so he could never ever beat Yo. I feel like that's a lot of the reason why Sui had such aggression, such hostility in him, because I feel like he was given like a golden egg with becoming a member of the numbers. With the strength he gets from Zero, he thought he could finally surpass Yo, and that's why he was so emphatic about trying to be stronger than Yo. You know, at the end of the day, Zero did nothing to Sui's brain. Sui was technically the same person who had appeared in the prologue, but for some reason he was just always so much more aggressive. Yet at the same time, he was always contradicting himself. He would still express humanity. You know, he took the beam bat, the treasure of the Minato tribe, whom he had once upon a time idolized. He keeps trying to tell Yo to stop participating in XG. Let's unpack Sui one piece at a time, okay? Let's unpack him one piece at a time. Sui's disregard for life, I believe, is meant to be like a play on this concept of life and death in the game. I think one of every game out there, every good story out there is gonna have a gag, right? It's gonna have a gag. I love trying to figure out the gag of games.
Lore keeper.
So I feel like the gag of this game was supposed to be that nobody is alive.
Huh.
Everyone is just like dolls, replicas, what have you. And I feel like Sui learned that truth. You know, Zero and Sui both know this truth, that everyone around them is just an indispensable doll. Because think about it, once you're someone who knows that if somebody dies, they can just be brought back to life whenever, that's when you start to disregard life altogether. You think of dying as not being anything special, anything really to grieve over, you know? That's why I feel like Sui was so happy to dispose of people, because he's like, they can just come back in the future. And I feel like Zero is the same way, you know? Because, can we get Zero back on the screen? I'm gonna go back to Zero for just a second. Now, Zero, despite being the big bad villain, is actually a rather polite individual. Now, why does that sound so weird? Because it actually is weird. Usually in like media, from what I've seen, in media stories that involve an individual who like engages in world domination, they are usually selfish individuals and will, you know, they'll kind of mock the people around them in a sarcastic tone, which is what Zero does a lot of the time. But what they usually don't do is be polite to people. What Zero does is anytime, like Zero will only express frustration and anger when they are not participating in his game. When people, For example, in the middle of like an XB match, if people start chit-chatting too much, he'll be like, let's get this game going, y'all. You don't want to piss me off. Come on. Let's start playing. You know? But outside of that, whenever someone has a question of Zero, he will not only respond to their question, he will respond with their name. Miss Tsuruko Senba, the tutorial queen, she always asks a lot of questions, and without fail, he always responds to her first by saying Tsuruko-chan, and then he answers her question. So he's acknowledging the humanity of everyone around him. That's not giving big bad villain. It's also very common for games, especially ones with longer stories, for them to have like a bigger, badder villain in the background. Usually the villain that gets presented to you right away is not the major, they're not the main villain of the game. I feel like all of this is just like hints to that. With Zero, even at the very end, he's honestly very nice to everyone. He doesn't have to give Yo a second reward because he already won his XG against Sui, but he does it anyway.
Gentleman.
It's because Zero knows that they're going to use their rewards to get rid of the governing rules in the city. So I almost feel like Zero wants that to happen ultimately. He expects it to happen, so he's like, okay, you'll clear the city, we can scrap the city, we can clear it down. Now, I've been saving it this whole time. But let's get into the main juice. My twink, Kuronaka Yo, our main protagonist. It's about time we talked about Yo. There's so much to unpack with Yo. It's not even funny. Yo, so a little bit of background about Yo. He was kind of the star player of Meguro Tribe. When Zero attacked Meguro City, it was Yo, Miss Tsuki over here, and Sui who fought Zero. Tsuki and Sui were defeated beforehand, knocked unconscious. And that's sort of the mystery period, because that period between Tsuki and Sui passing out and them waking up, that's when Yo disappears with Zero. Nobody knows what happens in that time. That's when Yo gets taken away to Zero's fortress, the 24 City, and he stays there for 2 years. During those 2 years, he's kind of almost like brainwashed into playing like a classical Dragon Quest style RPG, where he perceives himself as a village boy who is training to defeat a big bad demon, or was it a dragon? I don't remember. And he's kind of guided by this goddess statue who gives him requests to complete, and so he just kind of exists like this until the Trash Tribe comes in and kind of shatters his reality and wakes him up from this mysterious dream. This time he loses all his memories of before, being this little village boy. And this is where things start to get suspicious. This is where I start to get out my conspiracy theory hat.
Here we go.
Because this series, the Danganronpa series, the writers of these series are known for using amnesia as a plot point, as a plot device. But sometimes the amnesia is something that individual chooses to give themselves. There is a line in the prologue by Zero. Zero, in the middle, Zero has an XB match with everyone in the prologue. And he says this line to Mr. Ojiro Otori, Q, because he knows that Q is Ojiro Otori, the former individual who had also dominated Neo Tokyo. And he tells him, You of all people should know how boring it is to be at the top, how boring it feels to have no one who can challenge you, that you are the one who surpasses everyone else. And I feel like that's hinting at Yo's motivations. I feel like Yo is the big bad villain. Whether he's the one who created Zero, I don't know. Or perhaps back in Meguro City, he actually defeated Zero. And that's when maybe Yo is the one who felt bored of life because he defeated the big dominator. And so, for his wish, because the point of this game is for Yo to surpass all the XGs so that he can be granted a wish by Zero. But what if Yo already got his wish at the beginning, and his wish was to reset himself so that he can experience thrill and excitement and actually feel challenged by something again? And maybe it was his request to have Zero institute the governing rules everywhere, erase Yo's memories so that Yo can play this big game. That's my little conspiracy theory about Mr. Yo here. And I'm not pulling this out of my booty. I'm not pulling this out of my booty. It's the stuff I mentioned earlier about Zero, the hands on the shoulder, like he's being controlled. It would explain why Sui doesn't want Yo to participate in XG. The two people, the two most, Yo isn't even the one I'm most suspicious of because he doesn't have his memories. The two most suspicious people in this entire cast to me are Tsuki Iroha and Sui. Because these are the only two people who know what Yo used to be like. Nobody else ever met Yo before they met him in 24 City after he had already lost his memories. So the way that these two behave are a clear indicator of what's going on. So I'm very suspicious of these two. And so I feel like both of them don't actually like Yo. I feel like both of them are scared of Yo. They feel trapped by Yo because Yo was always the one who was ahead of them. Everyone was always behind him, but they kind of needed him. He was the Shun Kamiya of the Meguro tribe. So even though they were intimidated by Yo, they still felt like they needed him, and that's why they considered him their friend, and that's why they went to go try and rescue them. But there they encountered someone completely different, someone who had lost their memories. So beforehand, they knew Yo as someone who was aggressively dominant. Now they have this bland, sort of blank canvas of an individual. So I feel like Tsuki and Sui both took their own path of trying to change Yo. I feel like they're trying to play on this concept of a boring main character in order to use it as a plot device. A lot of gacha games will have their main character be extremely boring, bland, usually in both physical appearance and in personality, in order to encourage players to use them as a self-insert. Because it's very subjective. This is a very subjective thing, but a lot of people like to self-insert themselves as the main characters of the games they're playing, especially I've noticed in gacha games. The more personality the main character has, the harder it is for people to self-insert themselves. So I feel like in this game, they're using that trope of the boring main character to hide Yo's true personality. Tsuki, I feel like, is trying to take the direction of influencing Yo to be a nicer person. She's kind of, for the first few chapters, she's always by his side and usually there to kind of mellow him out, bond with him as he is. You know, she's trying to take she's trying to take the route of I can change him. You know, that's what she's trying to do. Sui is trying to do something different. I feel like Sui wants to freeze Yo in time. Because he believes that if Yo continues to participate in XG, he's going to become a nasty person again. And maybe that's a truth that he learned. You know, we never found out. Sui died without telling us why he became a member of the numbers. We never found out why that happened. So my conspiracy theory is that Zero told Sui about what had happened, and Sui now believes that with Yo the way he is, this is the superior version of Yo. So if Yo stops participating in XG, he won't proceed further, and his sort of bland, boring personality that he kind of likes will be frozen in time. You know? And I feel like this is why Sui says that line right before his death. I wish I had never become your friend. Because I feel like someone like him, who is so competitive and has such a desire to come out on top, you know, especially with his friends, I feel like Yo being so much better than him at everything was just mentally and emotionally draining of Sui. And at the very end, on his deathbed, I think that's when he realized that if he never had Yo in his life, he would never have all these mental and emotional issues, this baggage to them, you know? However, I feel like this game was not going to let it end that way. I feel like only the first arc of this game was going to be the XG matches with the 9 numbers characters. Because Yo and Suki decided that their ultimate reward at the end of all the XG matches was to have Zero revive Sui again. And so Sui would come. I feel like that's when Sui would have come back and gagged us and been like, yo, you're a bad person. You know? There's a few things that happen in chapter 2 that really support this concept that Yo is perhaps a little bit of a villain. The first thing I want to talk about is the XB match with Sui. Yo has a little bit of a crash out in the middle of the XB match. So, you know, a lot of times villains will, you know, love to berate the heroes to decrease their morale, right? So during the XB match, Sui comes in and he says, y'all are no better than me, you know. You complain that I'm over here killing people, but what have you guys done? You know? In order for you guys to survive in Minato City, you had to make sure that other random people died. Because for you guys to live as commoners, that means someone else had to become an underclass. And you did the same thing in Shinagawa City too, didn't you? You let other people die so that you can live. You're no better than me. This kind of makes everyone crash out a little bit, like,
no, you're wrong. We had no choice, you know?
Yo just comes in like,
so what? So what if we killed people? Sometimes, to get what you want, you have to kill people. You know? People who are stronger than everyone else, they're the ones who get to decide who lives and who dies.
huh? And so Sui and Yo just have this crash out back and forth, and everyone else around them, they're just kind of like, what? Tsuki is the one who crashes out the most. She's like, stop it, please, I'm begging you, please stop it. And what's even more suspicious is that after the XB match, Yo doesn't remember this. He's like, I think I said something inappropriate back there. I don't really remember. So that kind of leads me to believe that, Miss Eyeliner right here, look at the cunty eyeliner. Miss Eyeliner is the old Yo leaking out that this very aggressive individual, this person who believes he has the right to decide who gets to live and who gets to die, that this is what Yo was really like. And so that really brings some credence to this concept of Tsuki trying to change Yo and Sui trying to freeze the current bland Yo in the way he is. That's suspicious thing number one.
There's more.
At the very end of the story, after Sui is dead, they pick up his phone. And the phone lights up and we get to see his little home screen. Oh, look at how cute. Oh, so sad. The Meguro tribe trio. They had, even though Sui was crashing out, he still had his friends as his little phone wallpaper. Oh, isn't that sweet? Now, I think there's more to this. Like I said, these writers, they love to hide big story devices in very unexpected places. The thing that draws my eye here, that draws my attention, the phone is cracked, but notice how the crack conveniently is on Yo. It obscures Yo's appearance, which leads me to believe that Mr. Yo doesn't really look like this. Now, I feel like anyone who is anyone, even if you didn't play the Danganronpa series, I feel like, Danganronpa for a while was just so popular on the internet that everyone knows this diva, right? Mr. Monokuma? I feel like it's the connection is right there, right? The split hair, the white and black split hair is obviously a reference to Monokuma, but what if there's more to it? What if there's more to this little reference to Monokuma? What if, what if the truth of this little phone wallpaper is that what if Yo's hair is really all black? Another little theory I had is that maybe Shun Kamiya, who is dead, maybe his ghost, his spirit is merging with Yo, because y'all need to clock. Y'all need to clock the fact that Shun Kamiya also has blue eyes, just like Yo. And Shun Kamiya conveniently has white hair.
Fashion.
And don't forget that Shun Kamiya is now he seems to be appearing as Zero. So what if, the ace of Minato tribe, his ghost is now merging with the ace of Meguro tribe, and perhaps this whole concept of XG is for the ghost of Shun Kamiya to fully merge with Yo and kind of take over his body. I don't know. We're just throwing a lot of theories out there. We're never gonna get the. Well, no, we will get the conclusion to this because the writers are going to continue this story, just not in game format. So we don't know when we'll get the conclusion of the story, but are y'all picking up what I'm putting down here? There's a lot of different directions that things could go. Yo could be like a victim of some kind of body possession. He could be a big bad villain who is the reason the governing rules exist in the first place. There's a lot of direction things can go. All we know is that Yo himself is a little bit more sinister than we are led to believe at the beginning of the game. There's one last piece of evidence that supports something suspicious is going on with Yo. And we go back to our diva, Miss Tsuki. This, like I keep saying, this is the girl I'm most suspicious of. This is the girl that I had always been hyper analyzing anything that she says, because she is the only person in the party who knows what Yo was like in the past. And she refuses to talk about it. She never brings up what Yo used to be like. She only ever says like, oh, our dream was to be the best XD players in the world, and we just want to play XD with each other. Well, at the very end, after everyone has kind of recovered from the trauma of Sui dying, Kazuki comes in and he goes to Tsuki and he says, Tsuki, do you know anything about what's going on here? And Tsuki, without batting an eyelash, she just goes, no, I don't know anything. Now, if there's one thing I know about how anime things work, is that when you have a character who is normally all smiles and giggles and bubbles and girly popness, when you have a character like that make an expression like this, they're hiding a very, very dark secret. I don't have an outro. I was trying to think of something clever for an outro and I came up with nothing. The climactic finish. Oh, this aesthetic music for the outro. Oh my gosh. Thank you everyone for watching this video. I love you all so much.
I'm going to cry.
This music, we're here for the joy. We're here for the camaraderie of it all. I appreciate all of you who show up for these videos. This is such an emotional music to close out to, isn't it? Oh my god. Anyway, thank you all.
Bye.
Bye everyone.